Welcome to 5 Minutes of Torah with a BI Rabbi. I'm your BI Rabbi on YouTube this week, Rabbi Adam Stein. This past week has seen the news cycle focus once again on the president to our south, but this time because of events that are quite chilling, events that occurred last week on Shabbat in Charlottesville, Virginia. I'm not going to focus now on President Trump's comments or on many other things that have happened since then, but really on the events that occurred in Charlottesville. It was Shabbat when neo-Nazis, white nationalists, white supremacists, anti-Semites, racists, and bigots all came together for what they called a day of unity. How ironic. They marched and they chanted things like, literally they said this, "Jews will not replace us." You can see that on the news or videos. They displayed swastikas on banners and shouted slogans like blood and soil, a phrase taken directly from Nazi ideology. One demonstrator said, "This city is run by Jewish communists and criminal," well, then he said a word that isn't used anymore, but it was a derogatory term for African Americans. At the local Reform synagogue called Congregation Beth Israel, a place that not only shares our exact name of our shul, but a place that I've visited in the past. I know people who have been there, who've been part of that shul, who have worked there. On Shabbat morning during their services, 3 men dressed in fatigues carrying semi-automatic rifles, Virginia's place where you can do that openly, stood across the street from the shul, according to the temple's president, in a widely shared reflection that he wrote. Those men were there to threaten, not to protect. Nazi websites posted a call to burn the shul's building. As a precautionary measure, congregants removed their Torahs, the Torah scrolls, after services, and everyone filed out through the back instead of the front of the synagogue. In the year 2017, this happened. It's hard to believe. That shul was founded in 1882. It's the oldest continually operating synagogue in Virginia and among the 20 oldest continuously operating synagogues in the United States. Still thriving in 2017, but last weekend they must have felt like they were back in the 1920s, when more than 50,000 members of the Ku Klux Klan paraded through nearby Washington, D.C. With all the guns and clubs and knives and other instruments of violence brandished during the marching and clashing last Saturday, I'm inclined to feel relieved that only 3 people died, not more. But the fact is that 3 innocent people who should be alive today are instead mourned by their family and friends. H.J. Cullen and Burke M.M. Bates were Virginia State Police troopers who were flying a helicopter circling Charlottesville, keeping watch on the violent demonstrations at the rally of white nationalists. For reasons that are still unclear, the helicopter fell from the sky and burst into flames, killing the 2 troopers, both under 50 years old. Even younger was Heather Heyer, only 32, when she was killed when a car driven by James Alex Fields plowed into a group of those who came to counter the message of hate. And then he reversed and plowed into even more of them, eventually injuring over 19 people in addition to killing Heather Heyer. Fields was seen earlier marching with symbols and members of Vanguard America, one of the groups involved in the Unite the Awful People protest. This is a group called Vanguard America, a group whose manifesto declares that a government based in the natural law must not cater to the false notion of equality. So I'd like to spend the remaining couple minutes of this video sharing a few bits from the life of Heather in the hope that her memory may be for a blessing, as we say in our tradition, and that her death, though totally unnecessary, not be completely in vain. The strong statement from Heather's mother, from her eulogy that is echoed around the media and the internet, is that, quote, "They tried to kill my child to shut her up. Well, guess what? You just magnified her." It occurred to me that she might have been speaking to the purveyors of hate, that instead of shutting her up, they magnified her and magnified her voice. But I think she was also speaking to the 1,000 people who applauded that line in the theater where the memorial service was being held, that they, and all of us who are remembering her and sharing her message, are magnifying her. So a young woman who was nervous about going to the counter-protest last Saturday, as some of you may be for this Saturday at City Hall here in Vancouver, this young woman felt that she needed to be there to stand up for what she believed in. By the way, if you do want to go to the counter-protest here tomorrow on Saturday afternoon, Hillel of UBC is gathering along with many others at 12:45 at City Hall. Heather Heyer actually said to a friend, "I want to go so badly, but I don't want to get shot. I don't want to die." She went anyway. She didn't get shot, but she died protesting hate. An anonymous quote that Heather posted on her Facebook page several months ago can still be found on that page. It reads, "If you're not outraged, you're not paying attention." It's hard to pay attention to everything. It's hard to have compassion all the time. I just read an article yesterday about the continuing bloodshed in Syria that has disappeared from front pages recently. But if we're not outraged at anti-Semitism, bigotry, racism, baseless hatred that flares up around the world in Syria and elsewhere, causes death and violence every day, including Barcelona yesterday, we really do need to pay more attention. The parsha that we read this week, Parshat Re'eh, has a verse that tells us there will never cease to be needy ones in your land. The Bible in this context is speaking of the poor who need money and food from those of us who have and can offer. But the needy ones are more than just those lacking resources. They're the objects of hate who are targeted by the Nazis during the Holocaust and the neo-Nazis in Virginia last week. They're those who are hated for their religion, their gender, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, or any other awful reason that leads a human being to hate another human being. That verse continues, "Which is why I command you to open your hand to the poor and needy kinsmen in your land." Open your hand and let love and compassion flow. And try somehow, as Heather did, to see the good in everyone. Shabbat Shalom.